Hello dear chess friends, thanks for joining me for this chess endgame course video lecture. It's good to be back presenting one of these. This time, queen versus pawn. Why am I looking at this? Well, very simply, such an endgame is extremely common because really it's just the next phase of a king and pawn ending. If you think about it, this type of position is reached simply because white has played his pawn up to f8 and queened, and black is about to queen on g1. And such a position is so common because really this is the result of a pawn race. Both players are fighting to push their pawns as fast as possible and to queen. And then, if it's a close call, what actually happens? Can the first promoter win? This is our question, and I hope to answer this. So on with the show. By the way, we will have quite a wealth of knowledge and moves to cover, so by all means I recommend pausing the video at times if you're unsure, or maybe rewinding the video just so you can get those moves clear, and even review it again if you're unsure. So on with the show. In this case, white wins, and it's all about blocking the queening square. This is very thematic, probably the most important queen versus pawn game you should know. So we see that black is coming down the board, and we have just queened. That's why our king was supporting this square and seems so far away. This is what happens in king and pawn endings. The kings race from the center to the opponent's pawns, and after mopping up maybe a pawn at, I don't know, g6 or h7, his own f-pawn could queen, and probably the same has happened with black. So that's why white has a problem here, and it's not exactly trivial. So we need to know the right way, and this begins with queen f4 check. What's the idea? Well, after a small series of moves, we see that white is trying to bring the king in front of the pawn, and in that case obviously pawn cannot promote, and then we see the point. So the pawn is attacked, must be defended, and now we check. We're attacking both the king and the pawn. Only king g1 remains, and now king g7. We just bring up the king because ultimately we need it at h3, and then there will be checkmate at g2. So we see this recurring theme. Attack it, and if king h1, then we play like this. Just going back, it's very simple chess. If king h3, then bam, queen g1. All these squares controlled, the king cannot come, and our king just can come via whatever way, pick up the pawn. So this is very simple chess, and let's just see how this recurring theme works. Check. Tie down the pawn. Check. For king and pawn, the king is forced onto the queening square, and we advance the king. Again, black poses a problem. He threatens to promote. What do? We pin the pawn. It cannot move. Black must do something. If this, again, he cannot escape. I'm trying to highlight a square I1. Okay, he cannot. Again, blocking. We advance. Okay. Now we pin the pawn. It cannot move. Black must get out of the pin. And now check. And as we can see, king h1 is forced. That's checkmate. Okay, so we've seen this, and I'll close this. But now, just to make things simpler, if you're in a blitz finish, you need to get those moves right there and then quickly down on the board. What if you have 3 seconds? 3 seconds, white to play. What do you play? Queen g4. Okay, this is a very thematic position because we can speed up the process. Instead of bringing the king round to checkmate, in which case we might even have to repeat this thematic checking business when the king escapes, we can play from checkmate. Okay, these squares controlled. only e1 remains, and now checkmate. Okay, the pawn blocks the king. So that's just a speedy way. I'll run through this again. Okay, and now we have really the reason that queen versus pawn is in no way trivial. So let's imagine we're white here now. We like to show it from the perspective of the player who is gaining the best result, because then we can share the success, you could say. Okay, maybe this is a weird training technique, but I try to follow it. So now we're white and we're about to promote. We play king e7 just to threaten to queen the pawn. I've just noticed, obviously cannot queen immediately because this is lost. Okay, so it doesn't matter how this position is reached, but this is the position. Okay, now check. Black is trying for the obvious recurring thematic idea, and after this move, check, forking, king a pawn, it looks as though black is making progress. And as white, maybe we could be worried here, but we're not, because we see an idea, and it's called stalemate. King g7, threatening to promote, pinning the pawn, king g8, and now, okay, this is forced, since queen e6, king g7 just repeats the position. And now what to play? King h7, okay, now what? Clearly, in the other example, there were no such tricks, but here is one. We play king h8, and very simply, that's stalemate. So the point is that after this, black can do nothing. He cannot keep us in this, let's say, cage, because we're threatening to promote. And if he stops the promotion, then that's stalemate. Okay, it's a very simple example. Here we have a nice demonstration of gaining time, and really the point is that I believe there's a certain square, you could say, but I don't think this is included. And if the king is within these squares, yes, if the king is within this square, then white wins, because of a nice theme which I'll show you, because it comes up in this example. But at the moment, clearly, if white plays king f6, that's stalemate, because the king has no squares. So we need to gain time by playing king g6. Blocks the queen, so the black king can move. And now check. We play this with tempo. And now suddenly we realize that we're in the square, meaning that we can win. And I'll show you how. It's quite nice. Queen d5. By the way, I think this is why. I'm just remembering this from some very old chess knowledge I have. I can't remember. For some reason I have an inkling that the king mustn't be on this square because it must be reserved for the queen. And now clearly we need to cover this square. Check. Okay, check. Forced to the back, obviously, because king g3 can be met by queen f1, going to the queening square, and now here's the point, king g4. We allow the defender to queen, because after this, and under promotion of course, it means nothing. This is ridiculous. Now king g3, and because of the silly position of these pieces, we win. There's already a threat, queen f2 checkmate, and queen e1 checkmate, and nothing can stop this, or as Carsten Muller would say, nor verbally force. Okay, so it's game over. Checkmate. Okay, that's a nice example. And now our last one shows that in fact it seems as though this pawn is about to queen, and so there could be some checkmating chances because it is a rook's pawn, but we play very nicely based on the fact that there's this extra pawn. And of course, queen takes g4 could be the worst move you would ever make in your life, in your chess career. You must never do this, because we understand about stalemate, and it's a common defensive resource which we must stop, and it's immediately stopped because of this extra pawn. It can move, meaning there's no stalemate. Queen b3, and here is the idea. We don't bring in our king, which is far too distant. Maybe we could if it were on c4, but instead we play very simply, and just in time we checkmate. The point is that actually, although this is a good setup for defense, without the pawn, with the pawn it's simply a cage. Black has entrapped himself, and so we have this checkmate. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you much.